On a lonely stretch of Highway 281, just outside the dusty town of Goodfield, North Dakota, sat a cattle farm owned by the Madsen family. Locals knew it as the Big M Ranch. It wasn't famous, or even particularly large, but everyone in town knew the Madsens: David, the stern but kind father; Maria, his soft-spoken wife with her ever-present son Hat, and their 3 kids, Owen, Lila, and baby Caleb. The farm was modest. A 2-story white farmhouse with green shutters, a rust-red barn that moaned in the wind, and cattle fields framed by warped wooden fences. It was the kind of place you'd drive past and forget, the kind of place you'd expect to always be there, unchanged. Until it wasn't. It was a Wednesday when the last known photo of the Big M Ranch was taken, captured by a weather satellite monitoring storm activity over the northern plains. The image showed nothing unusual. Cows grazing peacefully, barn doors open, hay bales stacked in orderly rows. Everything exactly as it had always been. But by Thursday morning, the farm was gone. Not run down, not burned in a wildfire, gone. Entirely. Erased. Like someone had used a cosmic eraser and scrubbed the land clean. Where once stood the Madsen family home, barn, fences, tractor, and 200 head of cattle, there was now only a blackened circle of scorched earth, about the size of a city block, perfectly round, unnaturally smooth, and absolutely lifeless. The sheriff, Hank Rudd, was the first to arrive on the scene. He'd grown up with David Madsen, played football with him in high school. When he stepped out of his cruiser and saw that flattened, silent circle, he instinctively reached for his sidearm, even though there was nothing to shoot. There were no signs of explosion. No smoke. No debris. No remains. The earth wasn't cratered or cracked, just cooked. The soil itself had a strange sheen, almost glassy in spots, as if it had been flash melted under extreme heat. Trees on the edge of the field were untouched. Not a single branch broken. Birds still chirped on the outskirts, though they never dared cross into the circle. Even insects seemed to avoid it. It was only after hours of searching that Deputy Ray Simmons, younger and sharper-eyed, kicked something hard underfoot. At first, he thought it was a rock. But digging a little revealed it was a camera. A rugged, heat-resistant wildlife camera, buried under a thin layer of ash, almost perfectly preserved. It was hidden just outside the fence line, well, where the fence line used to be. The SD card inside was intact. Back at the station, Sheriff Rudd plugged the card into the office computer. What they found nearly made him fall out of his chair. The footage began like any other ranch surveillance video. A timestamp marked it as 3:12 a.m. on Thursday. The night was quiet. The cattle slept or wandered in slow, docile clusters. A breeze stirred the high grass. Then, without warning, the cows started to raise their heads in unison, as if hearing something just beyond the range of human perception. Their ears twitched. Some began to back away. A few started lowing in confusion, others began to run. And then they began to rise. Not all at once. A calf went first, its hooves scraping at the dirt as it lifted off the ground, its eyes wide with animal panic. A full-grown bull followed, ascending as if lifted by wires, except there were no wires, no machines, no sound. More cows began to float, limbs flailing uselessly, tails swinging, mouths opening in silent cries. One by one, they floated upward, pulled toward something above the camera's view. Something enormous. At the top of the frame, faintly, something shimmered. Not quite visible. A distortion, like heat waves, but circular and pulsing. Then the sky itself began to ripple, as if reality were fabric and something was pushing through from the other side. The footage glitched violently, and then came the scream. The audio feed emitted a single, blaring burst, like static, but deeper, more organic. The deputies in the room covered their ears. The speakers blew out in an instant. And the screen froze. The remaining data on the card was corrupted beyond recovery. That night, the sheriff's department was locked down. No one could explain what they had seen. Sheriff Rudd immediately contacted the state authorities. But by the time they arrived the next day, word had already begun to spread. And the internet had already taken hold. Videos popped up online. Aliens abduct North Dakota farm. Government blackout in Goodfield. Did CERN open a portal in the Midwest? Conspiracy theorists descended on the area. So did journalists, curiosity seekers, and self-proclaimed energy readers. But whatever happened that night, it didn't want to be found twice. Because the circle, so perfectly black and clean on Thursday, had already begun to change by Friday. Vegetation around the site wilted. Bugs that strayed too close were found dead, their tiny bodies dried out and crisp. Radiation readings were inconsistent, but enough to set off low-level alarms on amateur Geiger counters. And the birds, once happily chirping at the edge of the field, had vanished entirely. The government eventually stepped in. They cited a freak lightning fire and quarantined the area under a hazmat directive. The sheriff's camera footage, gone, taken by two men in black suits who refused to identify themselves and offered no paperwork. The Madsons, declared missing, their names quietly removed from local databases within weeks. But in town, people still talked. There was Miss Elva, the elderly librarian, who claimed she saw lights in the sky the night the farm vanished, massive and rotating, like a Ferris wheel made of starlight. There was old Jean, a Korean War vet, who said the burn pattern looked exactly like something he saw during a covert operation in the 50s. And there was the preacher, Pastor Clay, who began preaching about angels of fire and the harvest of the end times, just days after the incident. None of them could agree on what had happened. But they all agreed on one thing. Something took the Madsons. Something not from this world. 10 months later, another satellite photo made headlines. This time, in the remote Andes of Chile, a new burn mark appeared. The same shape, the same size, no structures destroyed, just empty mountain fields and wild llamas. And a local shepherd's cell phone, recovered from under a charred stone, contained a single photo before the battery died. A cow, floating upward, its eyes locked directly on the camera. What do you think happened to the Madsen farm? And more importantly, what's next?